what I'm really here for is to talk about public safety and to talk about where we are as a state and where we are as a county, how that affects me, how that affects you, and hopefully, like this group says, Stand Up Riverside, we do make a stand and we do make a difference and we do start turning things around. I'm going to talk for a little bit. I might be brief. I'm going to try to not go into too much detail. If any of you have listened to me speak before, if you let me go, we'll be having breakfast here in the morning, and I don't know if our host and hostess would allow that. So I will keep my comments relatively brief, but there will be time for questions after, and hopefully I can get all of the questions that you have, so when you leave here, you don't leave saying, I wish I would have asked this, or I wish he would have said that. So with that, I am the sheriff of the county, and your county, whether or not you knew it or not, is huge. And the department itself, we are the second largest sheriff's department in the state. Los Angeles is the only one bigger. We are the fourth largest sheriff's department in the country. The 11th largest law enforcement agency in the country. So we are relatively large. If you want to talk about my popularity right now, it is because we are so large, and this county, the word that I have said in the last year and a half, especially in the last maybe 10 months, has spread relatively quickly. And because we are so large, our voice is loud. And our voice is being heard elsewhere in places that I don't necessarily like. The place that's running our state, Sacramento, they really don't care about us. And we're a large part of the voting populace. And so I've made myself a target to them. Good. The truth always wins. And I think I made a comment a couple of months ago in December that I would not allow the sheriff's department to be bullied by our governor, and I would not be doing something that he wanted done politically by using law enforcement muscle. And that made me a target to them, because that's not what politicians want. Politicians don't want anyone standing up to them. But fortunately for all of us, that's what we want. And now it's time for us to stand up against our politicians. So it was a few weeks ago, it may even be a month or so ago. Well, actually, I need to start by saying this. This is probably in the last 2 weeks, maybe my 8th, 9th speaking engagement, but it brings an unbelievable smile to my face to actually come here and talk to smiling faces instead of computer screens and masks and everything else. So thank you all for coming out here, number one. Thank you for our hosts for allowing this to happen. But a couple of months ago, maybe a month or so ago, someone asked me, just in casual conversation, what was the hardest thing that I had to do? What's the hardest part of the job? What's the part of law enforcement that is causing you the most issues? And as we were talking, they were bringing up gangs, and they're bringing up drugs, and they're bringing up murders, and all of these different things that, of course, those are law enforcement issues, and those are things that obviously is my job that concerns me with how I protect you. But as I'm thinking about it, none of those bother me. None of those are a concern to me. When we have something that needs our attention, we have plenty of resources to direct toward that issue. And so it doesn't really cause us a problem. Yes, we have a gang problem, but we are doing a great job combating gangs. Yes, we have a homicide problem, murder problem, but we're doing a great job with that. A marijuana problem, we're doing a great job with that. We're doing everything we can to fight the influx of drugs. So as I'm thinking, it's like, gosh, I don't know what the best answer is. And it just came into my head, the only thing that I can't control, the only thing that I don't have a say in the matter is what really causes me the most problems, and it's our state government.
Yes.
I think a big problem, and I was just talking to a gentleman here, and we are all to blame. We are all to blame for our state government. Because if you look around this yard, you are going to see nothing but good people. For the most part, the overall majority of all of us are good people. I don't care if you're what race you are, where you were born, what political party you came from. None of that matters. For the most part, we are all good people. The problem with that is good people are easily taken advantage of, because good people mind their own business. They mind their own affairs. They put blinders on. They go to work in the morning, they do a great job, they come home, they take care of their kids, they make sure their family's taken care of, and that's it. It ends right there. And they assume, because they're good people, that other good people are looking out for them in their jobs in the government where they are supposed to, that's their job. And the problem with that is we elected too many people that aren't good people. They aren't there for you. They didn't do it to serve you. They did it to serve themselves. They did it for other reasons, whether it's other political reasons, somehow it's money reasons. I'm seriously trying to figure out how all of these politicians are millionaires. I know what they make per year. I've been a government official my entire life. I started in 1993 with the Sheriff's Department. I make good money as a cop. I'm not a millionaire. I'm nowhere near a millionaire. So how are these politicians all millionaires when I know what they did before? That's all they've done is taken government salaries. They're not there for you anymore. They're there for themselves, and how can they benefit? If you go back for the last minimum 10, 15 years, we are at a movement in this state that is all a liberal-led agenda. Really, depending on who you talk to, you can even justify a socialism or a communistic agenda. Now, I want to make this perfectly clear. I'm not saying anything negative about any different political party. I'm not saying bad about Democrats. I'm not saying bad about Republicans, independents, whatever it was that you want to identify with. My belief, my opinions, and my actions are based solely on public safety and my ability to protect you. So if I may say something bad about our legislature, I'm not saying anything bad about Democrats. I'm just saying that our legislature is currently led by all Democrats. It's a supermajority. They vote party line. They couldn't care less what the best option is. It's if the party tells them to vote some way, they vote that way. And that is how we got into this position. And we put ourselves there. In the last 10 to 15 years, the current movement of our political government is to do everything they can that is against public safety and is pro-criminal. Now, I don't even, when people, they'll say, how do you explain that? What's the end game? How can they even be thinking like that? I really don't know, but there is no other explanation. They pass laws that make things not crimes anymore. They pass laws that let people out of prison. We just had a COVID issue, and in the very beginning, I will tell you this, the first meeting that I had that was all of our local government, it was scary. It was what they were telling us. They were telling us that half of Riverside County, close to 1 million people, or maybe more, were going to die from that virus. And the fear factor, it even got to me. It was like, holy cow. I don't want half of my family gone. I don't want half of my friends gone. I certainly don't want half of my department gone. So we must do something. And so we did. We had the 2-week lockdown. We had, eventually the mask mandates and everything else. But as we started to get into that, nothing they said made sense. And the problem with me being in all these meetings is I don't like patting myself on the back, but one thing I am unbelievably good at is listening, interrogating, and being an investigator. And so when you tell me something on Tuesday that is completely opposite of something you tell me on Thursday, we're going to have an issue. And One of those two things can't be true. And then when you tell me a completely different story 3 weeks later and hope that I forgot the other two stories you told me, then we have issues with that. So as we continued through that pandemic, it became quite obvious to me that this was no longer a medical issue. We weren't talking about increasing the size of our hospital. We weren't talking about identifying the people that were seriously at risk at this for the virus and locking them in their houses, or taking care of them some other way, or using government funds to make sure they stay home and then take care of them. I'd use deputies to take them food, to take them groceries. I would do anything like that. But that's not what it was. It was obvious it wasn't. That's not what it became. And so you have to start looking at something different ways. You have to start thinking there's some other different agenda that's going on, and it's obviously political. Well, someone once said, never let an emergency, a good emergency, go to waste, a good crisis go to waste. And your state did not do that. They certainly took advantage of that. Your governor took advantage of that. When he took office, he was very, very, very specific in telling everyone that his goal was to close prisons. So with COVID, before COVID started, there was about 160,000 inmates in California State Prison. Right now, there's 90,000. They didn't serve their sentences. They didn't just get released because they were good people and because their time was up. They got released because the governor called it an emergency because of COVID. He said that their lives were in jeopardy for being in custody, and he just released them back into the public. So he claimed it wasn't violent people. Violent prisoners didn't get released. Our legislatures are claiming violent people didn't get released. That is a lie. It is a straight up lie. We are lied to constantly by our government. He released all of those inmates, and his goal is to close prisons. So by releasing that many inmates, he consolidated the prisons, the inmates into certain prisons, emptied out prisons, and once they were empty, he's closed 3 so far. When those prisons are deemed closed, they will never, ever open again. Once you governmentally close something, the only way to get it back open again is to bring it up to current modern building standards and EPA standards and everything else. And for buildings as old as our prisons, it's impossible. It's not that it costs too much, it's impossible. So those prisons are never going to be opened again. Inmates were let out for the sole purpose of closing prisons, and you all suffered for that. I suffered for that. Some of them were released into my custody. For the last year, I've had to house 1,000 state inmates that should have been in state prison. I only have 3,600 beds for regular county inmates, and 1/3 of those were housing state inmates because the state wouldn't take them because it was too dangerous for them, because they might get a virus while they were in custody. They are passing laws now, bills. There are bills in session right this second that do nothing but benefit criminals. Nothing but benefit criminals. There's nothing on the agenda this year that says that I will say, that's going to make my job easier. That's going to keep Riverside County safer. That's good for the state of California. There is nothing. And there really hasn't been one of those bills for a long time. Now, I'm going to tell you how they do this. Number one is because we're apathetic. We're good people, and we all suffer from apathy. And we just don't get involved. We're not standing up Riverside. And so this is how we were taken advantage of. We assume everybody's good. Now, I made the mistake a couple of days ago of telling people to raise their hands. Listen very, very carefully. No one raise your hand. You're going to think I want you to raise your hand, but I don't want you to raise your hand. You will be embarrassed. Don't raise your hand. If I told you that I wanted you this November, if I could just get this done, if you would vote for this initiative that's going to be on your ballot, and it's for safe streets and safe schools, if you will just vote for that, we can make a difference. I'm going to assume that everybody in here is going to raise your hand. Don't raise your hand. I'm just going to assume that you all would jump and say, oh, that's a great idea, that's a great idea. Here's the problem with that. That was already on the ballot. You all voted for it. It was called Prop 47. Prop 47 has ruined this state. Since that time, a little bit before that time, and since then, is when all of these bills to decriminalize everything, to not only take punishment away from someone, changing something from a felony to a misdemeanor, but actually remove the criminal element altogether. They just made things, they just took them off the books. Prop 47 made it to where all drugs now are legal. They're all mainstream. No one's going to prison for drugs. This rhetoric that you are told about these low-level prisoners that are in state prison just because they have a drug problem, and it has nothing to do with them. They're victims, and oh, they have a disease. That is BS. And they are taking advantage of you as a good person to believe that. Prop 47 made everything a misdemeanor. It made felony theft a misdemeanor and completely raised the limit to $1,000 before it reaches the threshold of a theft. So this is what caused our box stores, our mom and pop stores, a lot of them to go out of business, because the criminals would go into a store. The first thing they would steal is a calculator, and then they would walk through the aisles adding whatever it was up that they're putting in their carts, keep it below $1,000, and they're out the door, knowing that there is nothing that could happen to them. The big stores wouldn't do anything about it because it's a misdemeanor crime. They're not going to pay their employees to get hurt. They're not trying to get it back. They're not going to pay their employees to go to court if the person is charged with a crime, and the criminals knew it. So it was free shopping days. You load up your cart, you keep it under that threshold limit, and this is what we have today. Does anybody want to get, well, you don't even have to, I'll just tell you. It is not a coincidence. One of the biggest issues that we have right now, the biggest issues we have is homeless. There's not a community that isn't suffering from a homeless issue. No matter what downtown area you go to, and it's even creeping into residential areas, there is a serious homeless issue. And with the homeless issue, what comes with it? Two things that come with it: drug use and mental illness. So this is my opinion of mental illness. I know that there are people that seriously have chemistry imbalances in their brain, and sometimes it takes modern medicine to bring that into balance and bring them into control so where they can function. I get that 100%. What I also know 100% is when you ingest drugs into your body, whatever drug it is, I don't care if it's marijuana, which you also voted for, marijuana is legal. If you ingest marijuana into your body, it changes the chemical balance of your brain. Every drug you put in there changes it. Eventually, when you abuse it long enough, you've completely altered the chemical balance of your brain, and now you have serious mental illness. Serious mental illness. You have a drug-induced psychosis. And that's what our homeless population has. They don't have substance abuse problems. They have mentally induced, drug-induced psychosis. All of this was caused by Prop 47. There used to be a time when we would arrest people for possessing drugs, for selling drugs. And when we took them into custody and they went to court, their option was, you are going to prison or you are going to rehab. Now, who in here, if you're offered those two choices, who's going to want to go to prison? Rehab's the easy option. You get to go to rehab, show up to rehab once in a while, and you're good. It happened constantly, and I'm telling you, it was a success. Not every time, but if you can get someone clean for a day, clean for a week, clean for a month, clean for 6 months, maybe that was the one time that they needed, that they will never take drugs again. It worked. That's all been taken away. There is absolutely no consequence for drugs. There is nothing that I can say that says you're either going to jail or prison or you need help for your drug problem. They just say, I'm out. You know I'm not going to prison, so let me go, and they're back in the street again. We are in this position because we did it to ourselves, but it was our politicians that did it to us. And they have an agenda of doing this. It's about money. It's about government money. It's about who they're going to give their money to solve all these problems. I heard a very good quote the other day from a police officer in Los Angeles who his entire beat, that's all he has done for years, is Skid Row. And he does everything he can to help these people. But homeless camps are victim camps. That's really all they are. Everyone in these camps are victims of somebody. They're sexually abused, they're violently abused, beat up, they're extorted for money. Gangs control Skid Row in downtown LA. The people that are living in Skid Row pay gang members to allow their tents to be there. And if they don't pay them, then they get beat up, their property gets stolen, whatever the case may be, and that's their life. That's how they function. And the quote that he said was, "We will never solve the homeless problem when our experts have a financial gain for someone being homeless." And as I started to sit and think about that, and I thought about our own county, we had a mental health czar. We have a lot of employees that are being employed solely to help the homeless. If there isn't any homeless, where's that money? Where's that money going? Who's paying those people? Who's giving that money to certain nonprofits, to the people that work in the county agencies? So you can never fix a problem if the person that's your expert telling you how to fix it is benefiting it financially. And I mean, this is completely different, but I will give you the same scenario with cancer. We have a cancer industry. You know, they call it a cancer industry. It's not, I mean, what's an industry? An industry is a business. It's a big business. They don't want to solve cancer. It's $1 trillion a year business. Why would they solve cancer? Why would they cure cancer? Who's going to get all that money? It just doesn't make sense. So until we start waking up and until we start calling our politicians out on some of these things, it's not going to change. So with Prop 47, it made many violent crimes not violent anymore. Do all of you know that rape of an unconscious woman is not violent? So as long as you drug her first and knock her out, it's not a violent crime. Child molestation is not a violent crime. If you shoot at somebody and don't hit them, that's not a violent crime. Your politicians actually sat down and wrote that. Who are they benefiting? Who is that bill? Who is that law made to help? Only the prisoners. You all are the only ones that can let me go. So I don't answer to a political agenda. I don't answer to a politician. So that is why the state, our current state, doesn't like me that much. But you would think that the poll that I have, I'm elected by every single person in this county. Everyone elects me. The Board of Supervisors are elected by a fifth each. The Board of Supervisors have no power over me. They don't control anything other than how much money they're going to give me. And if they don't give me any money, the whole defund the police thing, then I'm gonna stand in front of groups like this, or I'll do another YouTube video and say, they don't want to give me money, they don't care if you guys are harmed and hurt and everything else. Do you think you're gonna vote for them again? So my Board of Supervisors is never going to say that because they want to be elected again. For the first time ever, I have been able to convince all of the chiefs and obviously myself to finally start taking a political stance on issues that concern only public safety. We don't care about any other issue except public safety. And so we are going around to all of our local officials, and especially state officials, right? I mean, eventually we'll go to local, but we're starting at the state because that's the most important right now. We're in legislative session. And we are telling them which bills that are happening right now that they should not support because it directly harms you, the people that vote for them. Even with telling them that, They voted today. There were 3 bills that passed the Senate today. One of them was a bill to remove all gang enhancements from criminals. So if you are a gang member and you commit a crime that benefits a gang, there is an enhancement, and it is a very harsh enhancement. If you commit murder for a gang, it's even worse. If you use a gun, it's even worse. That's another enhancement. So that bill was up to eliminate all of the enhancements for gang members, and it passed.
Oh my God.
It passed. And I will call him out. Our own local Senator Roth voted for it after we all told him how harmful that was for public safety of Riverside County. And he voted for it. It's going to the Assembly now, and all of your Assembly members are going to have to vote on that. I hope that when we leave here, you're all calling your Assembly members and telling them that they better not vote for that. So that was the first one. And now I'm drawing a blank, so I'll have to get the text that I got that made me so angry today. That one's kind of like a no-brainer. Does anybody think that gang members should be, you're all right. Their position, the legislature's of opinion, is all of the gang members that are in prison, all of the people that go to prison, it's your fault. It's your fault. They are victims of your society. And if you had just done something different, if you had just given them your television, or if you had just given them your car, they wouldn't have had to steal it from you. So the second one, because of COVID, you all know, and this is a good thing that all of you did. You all voted down the zero bail. I hope all of you understand how horrible zero bail is. Zero bail basically says you don't hold anybody. Right now, the way your justice system works is if you commit a crime, you're going to go to jail, and you're going to be held for court, and then, unless you post bail. You have to see a judge unless you post bail. And then the judge can either reduce bail, he can release you on your own recognizance if he feels that you're not going to be a danger to society, or he can increase bail and say, we're going to keep you here till you're all done because you should be in custody. So what the state did, what your governor did during COVID, was he implemented zero bail. So it went through the court system, even though you all voted it down. It went through the court system, and the judges, the state judge, our Supreme Court, made a ruling for the entire state. So there was no more local control. So everyone that went to jail, with the exceptions of killing someone, shooting someone and hitting them, because if you shot at someone and missed, that applied. You're good as long as you don't hit them. Everyone was getting released without bail. So we would arrest them, they would go to jail, they would go in the front door, and they would go out the back door. We had 3 shootings in Riverside County, 1 with my agency, 2 with others, within 3 days of someone being let out of jail that should have been in jail on the crimes that they were arrested for. And they ended up using a weapon towards a law enforcement officer, and we got in shootings. So they could have killed. Luckily, they didn't kill anyone, any of us. The homicide in Riverside, the poor woman that's walking her dog, she was a victim of zero bail. There was absolutely no reason why that person that killed her should have been out of custody. And it was in the front door, out the back. She walked down the street, saw that lady walking her dog, and murdered her. So you all voted it down, and what you did is you made the legislature mad. So now it's back up again. And Senator Roth voted for it. It honestly doesn't make sense. And sometimes the things that I say, you can't make it up. So today, the bills that he did in support of you, that he voted for in support of you, took all of the enhancements away from gang members and moved that bill closer to ensuring that I can never keep anybody in jail. I hope you all feel safer. The problem that we are having is that's all of our legislature. That's what our assembly members and that's what our senators are made up of. And I've met Senator Roth. I believe he's a good man. The problem is he lost his way a long time ago. And he quit voting his conscience. He quit voting for you, and he started voting party line. If you look at the vote today, it's party line vote. Democrats vote everything that a Democrat, any bill that a Democrat wants to give, pretty much the Democrats will all say yes. If a Republican puts a bill in that, say, wants to increase the penalties for murdering someone with fentanyl, it doesn't even make it out of custody. Doesn't even make it out of custody. So we have an unbelievably serious problem with our legislature, and we need to make a fix. We need to stand up to them. We need to tell them that they need to start caring about you. Over the last 3 months, and unfortunately, if you don't believe me that I'm talking strictly public safety, everything goes back to politics, which I guess it kind of has to make me wonder, where is the Democratic Party going? Because it's certainly nothing has been done to make you safe. In the last 3 months, well, we're already into May and almost June. I don't have statistics for a quarter. I only have statistics for the first quarter of the year, January, February, March. In those 3 months, the amount of drugs that we seized coming across the border into our county is, depending on the drug, is 600 to 800 times more than all of last year. There are more people dying in California per day from fentanyl overdoses than COVID. Have all of you heard that?
No.
What? What? You're kidding me. So I want to talk about fentanyl just a little bit, and I'll tell you how corrupt and how horrible our state government is. Fentanyl right now is the drug that scares me the absolute most. Absolute most. Fentanyl has a legitimate use in medicine. For any doctor that's here, it is a narcotic used in surgeries. It does a very, very good job of taking away pain. The amount of the drug that they use in surgeries in a medicinal use is like 0.000 something of whatever it is. I don't even know what it is, but can you guess how minuscule that is? That is minuscule. The dose for a recreational use, and fentanyl is a narcotic, so it's like heroin or morphine, something like that. But it's 100 times worse than morphine, or more potent. So if you imagine a grain of salt is a dose of fentanyl that would be just like an entire needle of morphine or heroin. So it's very, 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 very tiny, the amount that would knock you out. So when you shoot up with heroin, you go out, but you come back. With fentanyl, if you take that little tiny dose, you're going to go out. You're more than likely going to come back. If you have 2 of those little grains, you're dead within seconds. You will die. There's no bringing you back. It's over. 3 days before Christmas, 2019, we had a young lady in Temecula overdose on what she thought was Percocet. She thought she was taking a Percocet. Looked like a Percocet. She bought a Percocet. Turns out it was a complete pill made of binder, sugars, and sodium, and fentanyl. There was no Percocet in it. Fentanyl is made, manufactured, and shipped from China. That's it. That's where it's made. That's the only place. It's coming to our country via other ways, Canada, shipping, flights, mail, things like that. But predominantly, it is flowing across the Mexican border. The easiest way to bring it in is powder, and then they make it into pills while they're here. But they're making it into pills in Mexico that look just like a Percocet, a Vicodin, a Valium, oxycodone, all of those drugs that have legitimate markings on them, legitimate colors. They're making those pills that look exactly like it, but they contain nothing but fentanyl, that tiny little dose of fentanyl. And they're making them in bathtubs. So they dump all the binder and everything else, dump all a bag of fentanyl in there, and then mix it up, and then bind it into pills. So what do you think the chances are of getting 2 grains of salt in a pill? Pretty good. Pretty good. So you don't know what you're taking. And right now it's all illicit drugs. It's all black market drugs. These kids and even, some adults are buying them off Snapchat. Yeah. This young lady, she's 21 years old. She was home for Christmas from college. She was having trouble sleeping, so whatever reason, she decided she was going to go on Snapchat and she was going to order up a Percocet. The drug dealer who lived in Norco drove that pill to her in Temecula. She took that pill. She didn't wake up in the morning. Her mom found her the next morning. Straight A student, college student, good girl, and she died of and this was the way I looked at it back then, is I said it was a Percocet, it was a fentanyl overdose. She overdosed on fentanyl. So here's what I've learned since then. If I tell you someone overdosed, I'm telling you, you have a different view of it because the picture you get in your head is, they kind of brought it upon themselves. They shouldn't have been taking drugs. They shouldn't have been using that heroin. They shouldn't have been using that methamphetamine. They overdosed on drugs they knew they shouldn't have been taking. Her case, how could she overdose on something that she didn't even know she was taking? She didn't overdose on Percocet. She overdosed on fentanyl. As we started seeing this happening over and over and over, and now we're losing high school students at an alarming rate because they're trying these drugs that people are selling online or through social media apps, and we have good, normal high school kids that are overdosing on these drugs. So now we're calling it poison. They're being poisoned by fentanyl. You would think that we would be able to send these people that are killing all of our kids and even our adults now, you'd think we'd be able to arrest them and send them to jail. We can't. We can't. Prop 47 did away with that. The Safe Schools and Safe Streets Initiative says that I can't protect kids in school and I can't protect them on the street. How sad is that? So this is how sick our assembly is and our Senate. The father of that girl, he is doing a fantastic job in the entire country of bringing awareness of fentanyl and the dangers of fentanyl to parents. And he came up and Senator Melendez, our own Senator Melendez, thank you, she's fantastic. She sponsored a bill that they were naming it after his daughter, and it went up into our government, and basically all it would have done was make the sale of fentanyl, it would have treated it like a DUI. So what happens with DUIs, if you get a DUI and you go to court, the court gives you a document later that says driving under the influence is unbelievably dangerous and you could harm someone. So your second DUI, when you kill someone, you were already made aware of the dangers. This bill would have done the same thing. It would have said, you've already sold fentanyl and killed someone. Now, if you do it again, you know the dangers of fentanyl, the punishments will be harsh. That's all this bill did. And it said that on the second time, after you've already been warned, it was going to make it a felony. It didn't even make it out of committee. Didn't even make it out of committee. The Public Safety Committee voted it down on party line. That's the position, that's the situation that we're in today. But the passion that I have for this, the inability for me to keep you safe because I'm being hindered by our politicians is crazy. It's crazy. And I'm not going to sit down for it anymore. I'm going to stand up to them. I'm going to make sure that they hear your voice. I'm going to make sure they hear law enforcement's voice. And I'm going to make sure that they know that there's going to be consequences for not caring about public safety. I don't care. We're working on how we're going to make it happen, and there's an election coming up, and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be vying for your vote, especially at the state and the state government level. And I am going to have a public safety, some type of a spreadsheet or scorecard that I am going to put out on. We're starting a podcast. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to put it out on our social media through the Sheriff's Department, and we are going to tell you, I couldn't care less what political party you're from. If you're not for public safety and if you don't care about your constituents, I'm going to tell you about it. So if that person running for office is not for public safety, I'm going to tell you. They don't get to hide anymore. They don't get to hope you don't do your own research.